Hello, everyone. Welcome into another episode of the BOGcast. I think we're going on episode 7 here. Today, I'm going to get into a bit more of the assistant coaching replacements for Alabama, as well as potential portal additions that still remain after Javon Quinterly's exit, as well as the SEC schedule that just released. Obviously, it's not the dates and times for games, but the opponents that will be played and where you will be playing them is now known. And I think that will conclude the episode. Maybe throw some other things in there, depends on where my tangents go. But without any further ado, let's just go ahead and kick it off with the assistant coaching hires. Two of them were officially finished today, I suppose you could say. Austin Clonch and Ryan Panone both had their contracts approved by the university, but hires were made official before this. And then our third assistant at Alabama is yet to be officially official, but the cat is essentially out of the bag in regards to who it is. But let's go ahead and start with Austin Clonch. Austin Clonch is a 33-year-old kind of wonderkin. 33-year-olds aren't 5-year head coaches. They don't have 5 years of head coaching experience in college basketball, but here's Austin Clonch with 5 years head coaching experience at Nicholls State. He led Nicholls State to a 90-61 record in his time there, 2 regular season titles, and 1 Coach of the Year award. He's a guy that Nate Oats, I think, sees a lot of himself in. I think everyone is pretty high on Austin Clonch as a coach, and I think what is interesting about both Clonch and Panone, who we're about to get into, is that both are guys that have really great experience both offensively and defensively as coaches. They could be both guys that could chip in and help out in either lane. It's not as much set in stone as it was in Alabama's last coaching staff, which I think that's where my first tangent will go. Obviously, these assistant coaching hires are having to be made because the old assistants are gone. And it was quite an insurmountable ordeal for Nate Oats to pull off, but yet here we are, and here he is done it. It's kind of an incredible job losing your primary recruiter in Bryan Hodgson, one of the best in the country. He took the Arkansas State head coaching job. You lose your offensive coach in Antoine Pettway. He goes to take the Kennesaw State job. Pettway was a guy that's been a Bama lifer up to this point. Obviously, played at Alabama. Everyone remembers Pettway's Ruby Reds. I mean, Pettway's just an absolute legend of Alabama basketball, and he will be dearly missed, as well as Hodgson. And then, last but not least, Charlie Henry, who was the defensive assistant, took the head coaching job at Georgia State. And it is really unprecedented to have your 3 on-court assistants all take head coaching roles in one off season. It's really an almost insurmountable challenge to overcome in one off season, especially now in a world where the transfer portal exists and the transfer portal matters so much, and the off season starts before basketball ends for the year. The off season starts. I mean, guys are entering the portal while the NCAA tournament's going on. Some dudes are entering the portal before the NCAA tournament starts. I mean, so it's incredibly difficult to lose all 3 of your assistants because you have no one left to recruit in the portal with you. You know, you're a head coach alone against the world, but Alabama managed to pull out a really solid transfer class, and Nate Oats managed to land some really solid hires. Wrapping up with Austin Clonch, a guy that obviously at 33 years old is a 5-year head coach in Division I basketball. That is something that you can't take for granted. That is just some unreal experience for a guy his age to have. He's got a very forward-thinking offensive philosophy. Listening to him in podcasts or him in interview appearances, he will jive very well with Nate Oats in his sense of what basketball he would like to see played and how he would like to see it be played. I think he is a home run hire. And I think Ryan Panone is another absolute home run hire. I mean, Ryan Panone is a guy that when you think lifers in sports, you think of a grinder in sports, dudes that just eat, sleep, and breathe the sport that they love. I mean, Ryan Pennone is a basketball junkie. Ryan Pennone is a basketball lifer. It's actually unreal. It is unreal the amount of experience that this dude has as a 38-year-old. I mean, since 2011, so let's do the math. If he's 38 now, 2011, I mean, since he was mid 20s, this dude has been an assistant coach or a head coach. Started as an assistant coach at Wallace, I think, here in Alabama, and then immediately went overseas to take assistant jobs. Bounced around China, bounced around. He was a Slovenian head coach at one point. He was an assistant in Israel, won a title as an assistant in Israel, coached in Korea. I mean, coached in, I think, Germany as well. I mean, the dude has been everywhere. And then he came back stateside, took the job as the head coach of the Pelicans G League affiliate. I can't remember where they were before they moved to Birmingham and became the Squadron, but he was there for the year before they relocated, and then I believe 2 more years after the Pelicans relocated their G League team here to Birmingham. So Ryan Pennone has been around the game as long as anyone has. And after his head coaching stint of the G League affiliate, last season he was promoted to an assistant role with the NBA club, and now he has taken an assistant role here at Alabama. I mean, let's keep in mind, you just heard all of the experience that I just laid out. Multiple years as an assistant overseas in different countries, a head coach overseas in a different country, a head coach of a G League team, an assistant of an NBA team, an assistant at the college level. And he's done all this and he's not even 40 yet. I mean, that is downright unreal to have that level of experience at this age. I mean, Ryan Pennone is a wealth of basketball knowledge. I'm forgetting the exact organization that does it, but he's a poster child for one of these organizations that basically just runs coaching clinics. Like when you're the poster child for a coaching clinic, not even just like a little joke of a coaching clinic, like a legitimate high level one. I wish that I could pull the name out of my ass right now, but I can't. But you know, that doesn't happen by accident. That's not a mistake. That's not something that he just fell ass backwards into. I mean, he is one of the most highly respected individuals. It's an absolutely insane hire to be able to pull off for Nate Oats, but it's one of those that I believe could be very beneficial for Ryan Pennone. I mean, being an NBA assistant is one thing, but the way that the NBA is structured, essentially, if you're not the top assistant, you're lost in the shuffle of like 84 other assistants on the bench. So if you're Pennone, the options of continuing to be in the NBA and being one of the assistants on the bench or trying to make a name for himself and stick out more here at Alabama. Obviously, it was probably a tough sell job for Nate Oats to get him here. That couldn't have been easy, but I definitely see the logic behind Pennone's move, and I expect really big things for him. If you haven't, give the dude a follow on Twitter. It is, if you're just a basketball junkie, he's one of the best Twitter follows that there is. I mean, it will be randomly like 2 in the morning, and I will look down and there's like a tweet from Ryan Pennone about some like 240p like low resolution shot on like a Nokia phone from 2005, like blob action. And he's posted it and he's just like, wow, look at this action that this coach in like Frankfurt, Germany is running. And it's just like, Ryan, why are you up looking at this right now? Like, thank you. This is really interesting, and I appreciate you bringing this to my attention as a fellow sicko. But what the hell are you doing? It's hilarious looking at this stuff. It's absolutely downright hilarious. But on to the last assistant, the one that isn't officially official, but the cat is essentially out of the bag. Preston Murphy is going to be taking on the role of ace recruiter for Alabama, essentially stepping into Bryan Hodgson's role, being, as Andrew Slater dubbed him, the shark. Nate's got a new shark. And losing Hodgson, yeah, that's tough. And it's hard to say that you've upgraded over Bryan Hodgson as a recruiter. I mean, there's not really many upgrades to make to Bryan Hodgson as a recruiter. I can tell you that in earnest. But Preston Murphy is on par. I mean, connections in the Northeast, unlike anything, runs one of the more successful AAU programs that has top level talent running through it all the time since his show cause at Creighton got him canned, which I would encourage you. Obviously, I don't have enough time to get into all that here on this podcast. I got too many other things to kind of dive into, but it really does seem like Murphy got hosed during the FBI investigation. Essentially, someone needed to fall on the sword at Creighton, and Murphy was willing to take the fall for McDermott, which I think speaks a lot to the character of Preston Murphy to be willing to kind of fall on that sword. But it's one of those things that he will be a critical hire for Alabama going forward in terms of recruiting and keeping the roster stocked with talent. I mean, I remember it was revised pretty quickly, but I remember I can't remember if it was a 24/7 or an On3 article that was published, but essentially it ran with Jaron Stevenson talking about Coach Murphy and his recruitment to Alabama, and it was quickly revised to one of the off-court assistants, Christian Pino, I think. Well, the name was switched out because Murphy's show cause wasn't entirely finished at this point, and the hire isn't officially official. But recruits don't just make up coaches that they're talking to. I mean, Preston Murphy will be in Tuscaloosa, and word on the street is that he was a big piece in landing Latrell Wrightsell. He was a big piece in landing Aaron Estrada. I mean, he's been a big piece in the recruitment of a lot of guys like Jaron Stevenson as well, kind of off in the shadows, tucked away, but the promise of him being here and all that good stuff is already benefited Alabama. And let me clarify, NCAA, not that you're an organization that actually does anything, but if you're listening to this, this is purely speculation. I have no hard evidence of any of this. My hands are clean. Okay? Anyway, moving on. So, as I did the little breaking news kind of raw reaction emergency episode on Sunday night when Javon Quinterly hit the transfer portal, Alabama is now looking at technically 3 scholarships remaining open, but really the number is 2. Grant Nelson is expected to make the official announcement that Alabama will be his destination sometime this week. Alabama does feel very confident that there is no hiccups, that there is no kind of last second changes to this. The staff feels very confident on that front. To my understanding, that Grant Nelson will be in Crimson come next year. So while technically there are 3 scholarships open, one of them seems to be earmarked. So now with the loss of Javon Quinterly, let's treat it as 2 scholarships open for Alabama. And I've got a list of 4 names in front of me that I believe are kind of in contention for those 2 scholarships, whether Alabama fills 1 or 2. I think we'll start off with the most one-to-one kind of replacement for Javon Quinterly is Joe Toussaint, transfer from West Virginia. He's a quality veteran bench point guard. He's been around college basketball for quite some time. He is. Oh, Mako made a cameo here. Hey, Mako, come back, buddy. Come here. Say hello. You want to come here? Yay. Come here. I don't know if y'all can see him, but here's my big polar bear dog. This is Mako. He's the sweetest boy ever. Sorry I had to interrupt the episode for this, but you needed to see him. Anyway, back to Joe Toussaint. He's going to be a really quality veteran bench addition if Alabama manages to land him. Obviously, there will be some other teams that are in contention. Visits are already lined up. Alabama is slated to get a visit. That is, kind of contingent on the fact that he doesn't commit elsewhere before making it to Tuscaloosa, a la Arthur Kaluma to Kansas State. That one still hurts. I really wanted to see Arthur Kaluma in Tuscaloosa. What really hurts the most is Jaquan Walton not being in Tuscaloosa because of a marijuana arrest, because the program couldn't take any more PR hits. It's just a really tough situation, but he would have been perfect here, and I'm still sad about it. But anyway, back to Joe Toussaint. contingent on him not committing anywhere prior to an Alabama visit. Alabama is suspected to get a visit here. Um, you know, Trilly Donovan, I reference him often. I've found in the last 3 episodes here, but you know, the morning after JQ's departure, Monday morning, he tweeted out, a SpongeBob gift of, him just snatching a money bag away from someone. It was, Nate Oats coming in the portal to take the guards you've been talking to for weeks. I believe that was in reference to Joe Toussaint, which leads me to believe that Alabama should feel some kind of confidence here. If Nate Oats has built up that much momentum and covered that much ground, hello, buddy, this quickly in his recruitment, I think that says a lot. But he's not my favorite option as far as a guard goes at this point. I believe my favorite option at this point for a quote unquote guard is Paul Mulcahy, transfer from Rutgers. 6'7" combo guard, could legitimately play anywhere 1 through 4 at Alabama. Mako is loving being in the camera right now. He's never done it before. In the old setup, if you've been listening to me for a couple months now, the old setup Mako was never involved in. This new setup, Mako has never made a cameo, but today he's decided that he wants to be all kinds of involved. But Paul Mulcahy, he's a 6'7" combo guard. I believe he could legitimately see minutes 1 through 4 for Alabama. The dude is just kind of got that size, got that versatility, and he's an incredible talent. Shot 37% from 3 last year on roughly 2 attempts per game, so small sample. Obviously, I think at Alabama, that it's interesting to see where shots would be coming from, what kind of scoring option he could potentially be, where he would be taking more or less than 2 a game. Obviously, I think probably taking less shots a game if he was to come here, just because of the overall offensive talent that already resides here. But just with the offensive system, taking less shots, he still may take more threes. But he's a dude that legitimately does it all. He's never been a huge scorer. I think last year he brushed up against double-digit scoring. I think he was a 9-point per game guy, but he was also 5 boards and 6 assists. I mean, dude just kind of stuffs the stat sheet. And I think he would be a really, really fun addition here in Tuscaloosa. I think he would offer a lot of roster flexibility, which I think is a big thing looking at where this roster stands right now. It could potentially make for some really, really fun lineups, some really, really fun long backcourts, especially with, Aaron Estrada being a 6'5" guard. You throw in Latrell Wright-Sells, a 6'3" guard, and then you throw something out like Rylan Griffin at 6'6", 6'7", Paul Mulcahy at 6'7". I mean, just you could have a ton of length in the backcourt. But then I feel like this is a bit more of a pipe dream. He's had a really quiet recruitment. He's been in the portal for quite some time now, but there hasn't been much that's really seemingly developed publicly that I'm aware of. But it will be interesting. I have no clue if Alabama has gotten in any kind of touch with him. I have no clue if Alabama will get in any kind of touch with him, but he's probably the guy I would most love to see Alabama get in touch with. But then moving on, another West Virginia transfer, Muhammad Wague. I don't know exactly how you say it. It's Wague. I want to say it's Wague. Wague. I don't know. But what I do know is he's really athletic. A 6'10" forward, averaged about 10 minutes a game at West Virginia as a freshman. Didn't really have any major statistical contributions. I was wanting to say contraband there. He's not Bob Huggins. He's not riding around with contraband in the car. Anyway, as a freshman, you're more of a project type player. 10 minutes a game. Putting up some stats that's not bad, it's not good. It's kind of what's expected for guys like that. But it would be interesting to see where he would kind of fit on this roster, where he is developmentally from year 1 to year 2. I think, he offers a lot of dynamic upside. Is a 6'10", really big athlete kind of guy. Could be another, answer in the dunker spot that Nick Pringle will play. He could really add to front court depth while not being a guy that is necessarily depended on time in and time out. So he's another really interesting case. It will be interesting to see how that kind of develops. Alabama did get in touch with him, but obviously it's too early to see now how that relationship will develop, if Alabama will continue to pursue.
Hi, just a couple quick post-edit notes. There was a segment here that I had dedicated to Jordan Brown, who literally 2 hours after I finished recording committed to Memphis and Penny Hardaway. So I had to cut that section of the video, so that's why there's a bit of a rough cut here, and that's why I'm popping in to edit this. And then when I was looking back through it, see if there's anything else that I really needed to add, I did notice Muhammad Wag, or Waigu, I'm just going to keep calling him Waigu. But he is actually going to be into his junior season this year. He was a junior college transfer. I didn't catch that. But he was a junior college transfer and then was a sophomore at West Virginia last year. So this would be entering his junior season. I referred to him as a freshman last year. And the third thing is that Waigu is now slated to visit Alabama as well. That is an update on that situation. But that should be all. Thanks for bearing with me, and sorry for the rough cut. Also, sorry for some of the audio quality here. The original file got corrupted, and then I had to go and rescue said file by uploading a reference file, and then trying to use that reference file to get the audio and the video playable. So that's why there's a little bit of a compression and some low quality in the audio, especially in the back half of the video. So apologies for that. Anyway, back to your regularly scheduled programming.
That is a segue to get into the SEC matchup reveal that occurred just, I think, yesterday at the time of recording this. Obviously, the dates haven't been released, but who you're playing and where you're playing them is known. And for Alabama, here's who they're playing and where they're playing them. Only in Coleman Coliseum, Alabama will host Arkansas, Missouri, South Carolina, and A&M. There will be no road trips to Fayetteville, Como, Columbia, or College Station this year for Alabama. But where there will be road contests but no home returns, we have Georgia, Kentucky, Ole Miss, and Vanderbilt. And then as far as going to and fro, Auburn, Florida, LSU, Mississippi State, and Tennessee. So let's go ahead and just get into my initial kind of thoughts and reactions upon seeing this. Obviously, this is all still really subject to change at this point in the off season. Like I said just a minute ago, I mean, rosters are still so closely contested. The margins are still so razor thin that I could say these things and they not be true in a day. But where I feel this is good is that, potential league contenders Arkansas and A&M are going to have to come to Tuscaloosa, and you only have to play them once. That's beneficial. That's certainly a good thing. You don't want to have to take a road trip to Fayetteville or a road trip to College Station this year. These teams look like really good teams. And if you can get them just at home and you don't have to return the favor, bueno. And then you look at the road slate. I mean, all four of these games look winnable. Obviously, Kentucky still has some scholarships to work with. They just added Trey Mitchell. Antonio Reeves is officially returning. Whatever the hell is going on with Aaron Bradshaw and his foot that is apparently real messed up, but apparently also really, really fine. And Clutch Sports is just doing weird Clutch Sports things. Weird agency. I would stay away from anyone that is represented by them as a recruit if I'm a coach. Just, they've got a weird track record. But if Aaron Bradshaw plays, you're looking at a potentially really good Kentucky team, but they're going to have to go back to the early to mid 2010s of winning with one and done guys and winning with freshmen, which has kind of been shown in the last couple of years, especially with COVID seniors and super seniors and old dudes being the meta, is hard to do. So, you look at Kentucky right now, potentially a very winnable game. Also, they've still got a lot of scholarships to work with right now. If I'm not mistaken, I think they've got like 2, maybe 3. But, they could add some studs, and some of these freshmen could really go out there and perform. So Kentucky will be a really interesting case study. Ole Miss on the road. Ole Miss on the road, I mean, Ole Miss has got some dudes in year one under Beard. Let's, not beat around that bush. Ole Miss is not going to be the dumpster fire they were this year. This is not the Kermit Davis regime anymore. I mean, Beard is going to make Ole Miss a really solid squad for the limited time that he'll be there until another, bigger and better basketball school comes along and he, rehabilitates his image and he gets on to where he wants to be again. But in the short term, Ole Miss is going to be a really effing annoying team to play. Oh my God, you're not going to want to play Ole Miss. Going to Ole Miss isn't all that fun going to play at the Tad Pad, but no, it's not the Tad Pad anymore. It's the Pavilion, right? That's what they call it. I don't know. It's one of the two. But the updated venue was so nice at Ole Miss. I think I might go make the trip for that game, just because I believe that a lot of the mock-ups for the proposed Alabama, basketball stadium that's being built, but the construction cost have determined it's not being built for the time being, and it's a whole mess. Is a lot of it is based on Virginia and Ole Miss and their arenas. So going to Ole Miss, getting to see that, I haven't seen it since the renovation. I think that might be something that I do this year. But Ole Miss, it's a winnable game. Ole Miss's roster isn't exactly all the way there yet, in my opinion. It's really good, but I don't think it's contending for the league. But I do think they're going to be a tournament team. They're going to be a solid, mid-level team here in the SEC. I think any mid-level team here in the conference will be a tournament team. I think, early returns, I mean, even on these kind of bottom feeder type rosters, I mean, Georgia, who was poo-poo garbage last year, added talent. I mean, Todd Golden is the ultimate floor raiser. I mean, Georgia's gotten better. They've gotten a lot better. And then you look at LSU, who was another just garbage fire of a roster. I mean, a ton better this year. Florida, obviously Colin Castleton's gone, but they've gotten a ton better. Vandy, another team that was kind of like dead in the water, but then made a comeback, and then Stack was, Coach of the Year candidate. They look good again. They'll be an interesting one. The only one that, South Carolina got better. They did, but, it was hard for South Carolina to get worse, to be quite honest with you. So that's the only team that I'd say, is kind of going to get shoved in a locker this year by the rest of the conference is South Carolina. But, you look at Ole Miss, I think the road trip there is better than a road trip elsewhere. Getting 4 very winnable games with the trip to Ole Miss maybe being the toughest, and you got the trip to Vandy. Obviously, Alabama has some demons in that godforsaken stadium, Memorial. I mean, it's gives me nightmares thinking about it. It's just where dreams go to die. So I will never not be fully clinched up watching that game whenever Alabama makes the trip to Vandy. But, Oats seemed to exercise some of those demons in his tenure. But looking at where things aren't so great, and I don't think there's any great part about Alabama's schedule. There's good parts about it. I think I saw something that the early returns and the earliest projections, Alabama has one of the toughest in the league. And I think a lot of that is because of the fact that, like I was just saying, there's too much talent in the SEC for, real pushovers to exist. I mean, South Carolina is going to be the worst team in the league, in my opinion, but they still, return, Michie Johnson, who can go and win a game kind of on his own. He's one of those guys that he can just explode and win a game. They added Miles Studi, BJ Mack. They've got some dudes there. I mean, they've got some really talented guys, but I still just don't see them on par with everyone else. But at the same time, they're not kind of this garbage dumpster fire that they were last year. They've got some sort of pulse. But like I was saying, teams like Florida, Vandy, Mississippi State has found offense, I believe, through the portal. I mean, I feel like everyone in this league could potentially be a better team than they were last year. I mean, Arkansas, who finished 10th in the conference last year, I don't see them finishing in 10th again. I mean, they've just got a ton of talent in Fayetteville this year. Tennessee is going to be, I think, a better team than they were last year. I think Kentucky will be a better team than they were last year, at least to start. Maybe they'll finish at that same level, but obviously it won't be. I don't think it will be the Kentucky team that everyone thought, holy crap, they're not making the tournament, that they were last year. Ole Miss vastly improved. I mean, just vast improvements all around the league. I can't stress that enough. So that's probably the biggest drawback if you're Alabama and looking at the schedule is it's just you only get one chance to play the only real pushover in this league. But, I think where things get brutal is that Alabama's going to have 11 total games against teams that I would have projected in the top half of the conference at this stage. And that's, the road, that's the home game against Arkansas. That's the home game against A&M. That's going to and from Auburn. That's going to and from Florida. That's going to and from Tennessee. It's going to Ole Miss, and it's going to and from Mississippi State. I mean, all of those teams, I think, are in the field of 64. I do feel that way. I do feel that they're going to finish in the top half of the SEC. Obviously, I think it's too early to really nail myself to those. Obviously, like I was saying, where rosters are still so razor thin that a lot is subject to change. I'm just saying that's where I'm at right now. But, those are not going to be easy. And that's 11 total games of that. When you're looking at, 16 conference games in total, if I'm not mistaken. You get 4 home, you get 4 away, and you get your 8 home and away. So, yeah, you're looking at 16 total conference games, and I'm thinking that 11 of those for Alabama are against, top 7 clubs in the 14-man conference. I mean, that's tough sledding. That is tough sledding. And I think the SEC is going to be just a tough conference. But, this is what Alabama has going for it under Nate Oats every year is that Alabama's schedule is tough in the non-conference slate. Alabama may take their lumps and they may not have the overall record that some of these teams do this year with a whole new kind of remade roster that you're kind of working to get ready on the fly against, Purdue and against Arizona and against Creighton and against whoever's in the ACC SEC challenge. I mean, there's a lot of talent, and then you throw in the Feast Week tournament where Alabama's going to play Ohio State and Oregon. I mean, they're not playing, Sister Mary School for the Deaf and Blind all the way up until conference play. I mean, Alabama's going to have as many quad 1 opponents on their schedule, as many quad 2 opponents on their schedule as anyone heading into conference play, which, that's shown to be an advantage for Alabama, at least in the first half of conference play historically. You even look at Alabama's team, not last year, but the year before, where the wheels kind of fell off the end. And I think the team essentially played more to the level of what they were, but they were much more successful in the first half of the SEC because of the fact that that team had seen games against Memphis, that team had seen games against Gonzaga, namely against, Baylor, and, that toughens you up and that gets you ready for conference play more so than other teams are ready for conference play, especially during that first half of conference play where guys are getting a feel out for it. So, it'll be interesting to see really how tough this slate ends up being. I think it won't be a cakewalk. Hello again. I don't think it will be the easiest schedule in the league. At the same time, I don't think it's the worst draw. Could be better, could be worse. But I think that's where we'll wrap it up today. I appreciate you for hanging around with me, listening to the BOGcast. I think we're 7 episodes deep. Hope to, maybe come back with, the official news of the Grant Nelson announcement. Maybe we see whoever kind of does fill out JQ's roster spot that was vacated through the portal. And I'll probably be back whenever that news drops. But until then, look forward to seeing where things go. Thank you for hanging around with me. Much love.